The feedback from the microphone sliced through the silence of the ballroom like a knife. 200 of Connecticut's elite stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips, staring at the stage. My father, Richard, gripped my shoulder with a hand that felt more like a claw. He had just publicly demanded I sign a power of attorney to save the family legacy. When I whispered no, he leaned in, not realizing the microphone was still live. Sign it. You useless burden, he hissed. I wish I had never birthed you. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just smiled, looked him in the eye, and said 3 words that would cost him everything. Consider me dead. Then I turned and walked out. Before I tell you exactly how I destroyed his entire world in the next 30 minutes. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. I want to see how far this story travels. The applause followed me down the hallway. That was the sound that haunted me most. Not my father's insult, but the clapping. You might wonder how 200 sophisticated, wealthy people could witness a father publicly blackmail his daughter and respond with an ovation. That is the trap of normalized cruelty. My father, Richard, had spent 20 years crafting a very specific narrative. To the world, I wasn't an independent woman with my own assets. I was the family steward, the dutiful fixer, the one who existed solely to keep the machine running. He had trained them to see my sacrifice not as generosity, but as an obligation. So when he demanded my property, they didn't see theft. They saw a king collecting his due taxes. They didn't see a victim. They saw a servant refusing to serve. And they were offended on his behalf. But they didn't know who really built the castle. I walked past the catering staff, who nodded at me with terror in their eyes. They knew. I wasn't just a guest. I was the architect of shadows behind the entire Henderson event empire. Every crystal flute, every silk napkin, every light fixture in that ballroom was there because I signed the contract. My father was a man who lived on the fumes of past glory and credit lines I secured. He was broke, destitute. The Christmas Eve charity gala wasn't a celebration. It was a desperate fishing expedition for investors to save a sinking ship. A ship I had been bailing out for 5 years. I reached the heavy oak doors of the manor. The cold Connecticut air hit me, sharpening my focus. I thought about the $250,000 I had personally fronted for this night. The catering alone was $60,000. The vintage wine, the decor, the massive industrial generator trucks humming discreetly behind the hedge maze, all paid for from my accounts. All leveraged on my credit. Because Richard claimed his liquidity was just tied up. It wasn't tied up. It was gone. He had gambled it away on bad investments and vanity projects, leaving me to patch the holes in the hull. And tonight, instead of thanking me, he tried to steal the only lifeboat I had left the deed to my grandmother's cottage. The one asset I had kept strictly in my name. I looked back at the house. It glowed with golden light. A beacon of warmth and wealth in the dark winter night. It was a beautiful illusion. And like all illusions, it required a constant supply of power to maintain. Power that I controlled. I reached into my purse and pulled out my car keys. My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. There is a strange, cold clarity that comes when you realize the people you love are actually parasites. You stop trying to feed them. You start figuring out how to fumigate. I opened the door to my sedan, the only modest thing I owned, and sat in the driver's seat. I didn't start the engine immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. A sharp, clinical contrast to the warm yellow of the party. It was time to show Richard exactly what happens when the architect decides to pull the foundational pin. The blue light of my laptop screen was the only thing visible in the dark car. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The kind of focus I used when managing $1 million logistics crisis. My father thought he had stripped me of my value when he took the microphone. He forgot that value isn't just about what you own. It's about what you control. And tonight, I controlled everything. I wasn't just the daughter he wished he hadn't born. I was the signatory on every vendor contract, the guarantor on every rental agreement, and the admin for every digital system running that party. He wanted me dead. Fine. Then the ghost was about to haunt the machine. I opened the command terminal for the event management software. It was a system I had customized myself to streamline the family business. I called it the Blackout Protocol. It wasn't designed for revenge. Originally, it was designed for risk management. A failsafe in case a client defaulted on payment. But Richard had just defaulted on the biggest debt of all fatherhood. Step 1. The power. The entire gala was running on massive industrial generators hidden behind the estate's east wing because Richard hadn't paid the utility bill in 3 months. And the grid had cut him off. I was the one paying the rental company. I opened the chat window with the site foreman. Authorization code, Lauren01. Terminate feed immediately. Breach of contract. The reply came back in seconds. Copy that. Shutting down in 2 minutes. Step 2. The feast. The catering company was the best in Connecticut. Led by a woman named Elena, who I had worked with for years. She knew Richard was a liability. She only took the gig because I personally guaranteed the funds. I sent her a direct text. He tried to seize my assets. The guarantee is void. Pack it up. Elena. Take the wine. Take the lobster. Take the plates. Leave nothing. I watched the 3 dots dance on the screen. Then, a simple reply. On it. Step 3. The narrative. Richard loved to control the story. He loved the spotlight. So I decided to give him one last moment to shine. The main ballroom had a massive LED wall behind the stage. Currently cycling through photos of Richard looking benevolent and wealthy. I accessed the media server remotely. I deleted the slideshow. In its place, I uploaded a single PDF file I had named The Legacy. It wasn't a sentimental montage. It was a dossier. Scans of the foreclosure notices he hid in his desk. The credit card statements showing he spent the company payroll on vintage watches. The loan documents where he forged my signature. And right in the center, in bold red text, total debt, $5 million. Status insolvent. I pressed enter. The upload bar raced across the screen. Green. Complete. I looked up at the house. Inside. The band was playing a waltz. The guests were laughing. Drinking wine I paid for. Celebrating a man who was a hollow shell. They had no idea that the floor was about to drop out from under them. I checked the time. 30 minutes had passed since I walked out. It was time. I didn't start the car. I just sat there, watching the windows of the manor, waiting for the lights to die. This wasn't a temper tantrum. It was a foreclosure. The silence hit first. The waltz died mid-measure, strangled as the amplifiers lost power. Then, the light. From my vantage point in the driveway, it looked like the manor simply ceased to exist. 1 second, it was a blazing beacon of excess. The next, it was a black void against the night sky. A collective gasp rippled out from the estate, loud enough to reach me through the glass of my car window. Then came the hum, the low, mechanical groan of the massive generators spinning down, followed by the click-clack of the emergency backup lights flickering on. They weren't the warm, amber lights of a party. They were cold, industrial halos designed for evacuation, casting long, skeletal shadows across the lawn. The illusion was broken. The winter wonderland now looked exactly like what it was, a desperate stage set built on a swamp of debt. Inside, I knew exactly what was happening. I had choreographed the chaos as precisely as I had planned the menu. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Elena, the head caterer. Powered down. Executing retrieval. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. Richard would be trying to spin this. He would be standing on the darkened stage, laughing, that nervous, hollow laugh, shouting that it was part of the show, a dramatic interlude before the fireworks. But then he would see Elena. She wouldn't be bringing out the dessert. She and her team would be moving with military efficiency, stripping the tables, The vintage Cabernet, boxed. The lobster tails, trashed. The crystal, crated. My phone buzzed again. Another text. This time from a guest, a business partner I had cultivated for years. What is going on? The caterers just took the plate out from under my wife. They said the host is insolvent. Insolvent. The word hung in the air. Heavier than the cold. Richard's worst nightmare wasn't poverty. It was embarrassment. And I had just served him a 5-course meal of it. Then, the final stroke. The main generator was dead. But the backup circuit for the AV system was still live. I watched through the windshield as the massive LED wall behind the stage, the only bright thing left in the darkness, flickered back to life. It didn't show Richard's smiling face. It showed the PDF I had uploaded. Even from the driveway. The red text was legible, glowing like a neon accusation in the night. Total debt $5 million. My phone didn't just buzz this time. It screamed. Richard. I let it go to voicemail. I watched the screen on my dashboard light up with his name again and again. He wasn't checking on me. He wasn't worried I'd been kidnapped. He knew. He knew because only one person had the access codes to the generator. The catering contracts. And his secret financial shame. After the 5th call, I listened to the voicemail. His voice was distorted, cracking with a rage so pure it sounded demonic. You ungrateful little bitch. You think this is funny? Turn the lights back on. Turn them back on right now, or I will bury you. I will tell the police you stole the money. I will tell them you're crazy. Fix this, Lauren. Or so help me God. I will finish what I started and ruin you. He hadn't learned a thing. He didn't ask why. He didn't offer an apology. He immediately went to threats. He was drowning. And his only instinct was to try and drag me under with him. I deleted the message. I didn't need to hear his threats. I needed him to make his next move. I needed him to do exactly what a narcissist does when he loses control, escalate. I looked toward the house, where flashlights were now beaming through the windows. Chaotic and frantic. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for him to walk into it. I sat in the dark of my car, watching the front door of the manor. I knew Richard. I knew his playbook better than he knew himself. When a narcissist is cornered, they don't surrender. They don't reflect. They weaponize victimhood. And right on cue, the heavy oak doors swung open. Richard stepped out onto the portico, illuminated by the harsh glare of the emergency security lights. He wasn't alone. He had dragged a few key investors and his wife, Patricia, out with him, gesturing wildly toward the dark driveway where I was parked. He pulled out his phone and began an exaggerated performance hand on his chest. Frantic gestures. Feigned panic. I didn't need to hear the call to know what he was telling 911. In his story, I was a hysterical intruder, sabotaging his charity event. He believed that if he got me arrested, he could rewrite the night, dismiss the debt evidence as the delusion of an unstable daughter, and emerge as the hero of a family tragedy. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flooded the driveway. Richard strode toward the officers, confident again, playing the Lord, demanding protection. I didn't run or hide. I leaned against my car and waited. He pointed at me, shouting for my arrest. 2 officers approached while Richard followed behind them, grinning. He thought the law was another tool he could wield. Standing on the lawn he believed he owned. He ordered the police to remove the daughter he treated like property, unaware he had just triggered the final trap. The sergeant told me the homeowner wanted me removed. I calmly handed him a blue-bound folder instead. Inside was a notarized quitclaim deed. Filed 5 years earlier? The house wasn't Richard's. It was mine. I explained loud enough for the guests to hear that my father had transferred the estate to me to shield it from a lawsuit. He thought he was using me. He forgot that ownership cuts both ways. He hadn't paid the mortgage in years. I had. Legally. He was a tenant, at will. I revoked his tenancy on the spot and requested his removal. Richard panicked, insisting it was a legal trick, that he paid for everything, The sergeant asked one simple question: was his name on the deed? It wasn't. The answer was final. As Richard was being escorted out, black SUVs blocked his path. Federal agents stepped out. IRS criminal investigation. This wasn't a raid. It was a scheduled pickup. For 3 months, I had compiled a forensic audit: fraud, tax evasion, unauthorized credit lines. I had sent everything to federal authorities days earlier. The debts he dismissed weren't gossip. They were evidence. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound ended everything he thought he controlled. The next morning, I sat in a quiet cafe, deleting voicemails, begging for help. Across from me, a property manager slid over a contract. The estate would become a wedding venue, profitable within months. I signed without hesitation. I didn't sell the house. I reclaimed it. I deleted the spreadsheet titled Family Obligations and walked into the winter air feeling lighter than I ever had. I didn't lose a family that night. I lost the weight that was drowning me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving. I was free.